Hello and welcome everyone to this month's episode of JigRetro. Today we'll be delving into the subject that's often overlooked by video game enthusiasts, sports titles. But before you bore off the subject, I'm not talking about modern sports titles that end up in bargain bins year after year, with little in the way of updates except for changing the teams and a few recycled game mechanics. I'm talking about the heyday of sports titles, those which were released on the Sega Megadrive. When the Megadrive released, Sega quickly realised that they could be successful over Nintendo if they aimed their games at a slightly different demographic. One of the ways that they did this was to bring a huge amount of sports games to the system. These great multiplayer games are often brilliant to play with buddies, and they're also relatively cheap compared to other games to collect for, because people are just not looking for them to add to their collection. The first game to mention is by Codemasters, and it's Pete Sampras Tennis. Pretty much as it says on the tin, this is a Pete Sampras license game, which is a great and competitive game in 2-player, or even with certain cartridges which have a couple of extra gamepad slots can be 4-player. The controls are simple, 3 face buttons for regular shot, spin shot and lob shots. To be honest, this game hasn't aged particularly well, especially with the likes of virtual tennis about, but once you get used to the timing it can be fun to play, especially in multiplayer.
30 long.
The second game we're going to discuss is Lara Cricket, and I'm mentioning this game specifically to my good friend Nick, who I know is a huge cricket fan. Pretty much any sport in general, and this would definitely be the Mega Drive sports game for him. My brother also owns this game and he really enjoys it too. It features a pseudo 3D viewing angle and the game itself is shockingly deep. This is the best cricket game of all time, and I personally also enjoyed the one on the Sony PlayStation. The third game I'm going to mention is Madden. You can't really go wrong with any iterations of this game. I personally remember 94 the most, from a nostalgia perspective. I believe that 92 or 95 are considered the best overall. It encompasses the sport well, and with only a little bit of knowledge you can have lots of fun with this game. Making a sweep pass and gaining loads of yards is seriously fun on this title, and the verbal audio snippets bring the package together nicely. From a fun aspect, I'd be more likely to pick up NFL Blitz 2000 on the Sony PlayStation for some brutal American football action, but this series would certainly be my next choice. Speaking of another arcade action sports title, NBA Jam, just like I've got on the arcade machine behind me. He's on fire! This game by Midway is a bona fide classic, and the port on the Sega Megadrive is fantastic. Over-the-top slam dunks, exaggerated gameplay, and audio commentary make this game so much fun. A simple 2-on-2 version of the sport with many of the overcomplicated rules removed. It holds its own today just as much as it did when it was first released. For those not familiar with this title, then get familiar ASAP. I've only discovered this game in more recent years and I'm so glad I did.
Ugly shot! Intercepted! Puts up a brick shot! Going!
The fifth game I'm going to discuss is PGA Tour Golf 3. Any of the 3 PGA Tour Golf games are worth a play, and although I feel that the modern mechanic of using an analog stick to swing the club in real time potentially makes these games slightly less worthwhile, but enjoyment can definitely still be had. This is the classic golf game controls with a 3-button tap one to initiate backswing, one to initiate the forward swing, and one to hit the ball perfectly. I always have time for a relaxing game of golf on any system, and for the Megadrive, the PGA Tour Golf games are the best. Next game I would like to mention is Sensible Soccer. This game is not to be underestimated. The addictive fun of this simple top-down football game absolutely makes it. Simple to pick up and play and challenging to master. For me, this game felt a lot tighter and faster, gameplay-wise, than the clunky and often rather sluggish FIFA titles at the time. My favourite mechanic in this game is the aftertouch. Curving shots past the keeper is so satisfying. And finally, a game that holds huge nostalgia for me and definitely my favourite sports game on the Sega Megadrive, NHL 94. This year's iteration is considered the best because it introduced the one-timer, which is a real hockey move, where you pass and shoot straight away in one motion. The defence is fun with all the grunts and bone crunching in sound effects that you get when jamming an opponent against the side of the rink. In fact, the sound effects overall really immerse you in the game. The crowd and the music all gives you the correct atmosphere. Playing up to 4 players is a hoot. This is a superb multiplayer game. The only potential downside is the removal of fighting, which I'm aware is a huge part of the real NHL hockey, but in these games it was just a random button mashing mess. The games that still hold up to this day are Sensible Soccer, NBA Jam, and NHL 94. I'm sure those games can still be enjoyed by absolutely anyone to this very day. The others, in hindsight, are still enjoyable, but maybe just for Mega Drive enthusiasts. This is just my list of some of my favourite sports titles on the Sega Mega Drive, but as always, I'd love to hear your views. Are there any glaring omissions on the list that you would have added? I'm always keen to expand my knowledge and my collection for other classic titles, so feel free to comment below. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like, share and subscribe. Look after yourselves and each other and get your geek on with JigRetro.